yesterday. It's all running together. It's good to see you again. It's all running together. Typically, I start off with the 5 C's and I go through my spiel, but I'm going to do something a little different tonight because I have some additional new discussion topics that are requested. So what's in my hand are you're here face to face, but parents, families have been sending us questions through email, which is really cool. So I can go through their questions and answer yours, and then if we have enough time, I'll get to my overview. I've done it several times. Mr. Ezrati's here. He's filmed it. You've seen it once. You've seen it a couple of times. It's running. Where's it running, David? Or are you speaking today?
YouTube.
Okay, thank you. It's running on YouTube. All right. Topics for today. New discussion topics. No, I'm gonna switch it up again. I'm gonna go old business into business. Old business. Yonder pouches. This is from the previous 2 weeks. Yonder pouches. Why do students need yonder pouches? Great question. Yonder pouches are pouches where the phones are placed in there and locked up for the day, and at the end of the day, they're unlocked so they can get them back. Here's what we're looking at. First of all, students have figured out a way to disarm those yonder pouches. And so the ones who want to get their phones out, they do. That's number one. 2, I think the idea was to stop students from videotaping things that went on in school and then having them go viral. I get that, and we're working with the leadership team to process efficient ways to have students have their technology without having them film things. I'll just say this. I was a high school principal a decade ago, and I think things have changed. Our position was put the phone up, don't get it out. Sometimes kids would get it out. The principals and SROs would walk to the room and we say, hey, give me the phone and we'll give it back to you at the end of the day. It was real simple. I would just say that things have changed a little bit since then. This idea around TikTok, this idea around going viral, like how important that is now. And so we have to think through this some more as a team to balance what I think are high school kids' rights. In fact, I received a text message today from some students at Stivers who are petitioning me to get rid of the yonder pouches. And I'm going to take that seriously. I mean that. Because I was at Cincinnati Moeller this week. I saw 900 kids walking around with their phones. They were at lunch with their phones. Yeah, philosophically, I got to think through this. Yeah, I get the viral piece, but these phones are integral parts of who kids are. You know, and how do we balance what we think they're going to do and and the bad things that might happen with how do we use them for instruction? How do we use them to do different things other than lock them up? It also takes us a long time at all the high schools to get kids in because we're dealing with this process of managing phones. Then you stop instruction because you stop early because you're dealing with this process of managing phones. So I was on the operations side last year and I wasn't paying much attention to it, but I am now. I have a team of people that will figure it out and work through some type of compromise in conjunction with the school-based leaders who deal with the students every day. Yonder pouches. Lunch and recess times. We've been looking at lunch. There was an observation that kids didn't have enough time to eat lunch. In some spaces, well, let me say this. We've been focusing on elementaries, but I saw some head shaking. So we'll get on top of the high schools too. But we've been focusing on elementaries, and we are in the process of still compiling information. So far, in some cases that's the case, some others not. It depends on the size of the building. The larger the building, the less likely you are to have enough time. The smaller the building, the more likely. We will continue to get out in buildings and get this information, and then come up with some type of plan to figure out how we can make sure that kids don't have to wolf their food down to run out for recess, and at the high school level to make sure that they can finish as well. High school and middle school. Why do some schools have a 7 o'clock bell time? That is complex. We transport charters and parochial schools. They really influence what time our schools start and what time and where we pick kids up. That's an issue, ongoing issue, in addition to the quadrants that we are in the process of investigating this year. Now that we're on the academic side, now that we're doing better at getting people where they're supposed to get in terms of kids, picking them up and dropping them off, although today was tough. Today was not a good day for transportation, I'll just tell you that right now. We're still dealing with several issues that we'll be dealing with after this here today. Hopefully tomorrow will be a better day. But now that we have enough drivers and attendance is good enough, now let's talk about how we can work longitudinally with the charter schools to either A, figure out a way to extract them and take them out of our routing system so that we can then develop our own bell schedule that's germane to Dayton Public Schools, or recruit even more drivers and come up with better ways to route and schedule buses. And so we're actively working on that now. We continue to try to put something in place for the spring of next year. Transportation, RTA schedules not aligning with school schedules. Students being late as a result. Hey, when I was here last year, we saw the schedule actually change to make the kids even later. Yeah, so instead of assisting us, the schedule changed and kids got even later. That's an ongoing conversation between RTA and us. I got an email, text message today from the Dayton Development Coalition. We're working with the library. Chief Wright and I will be working with them next week, and we're trying to have a meeting around the 12th, September 12th, right in there, to say, hey, how do we take next steps to work on this relationship between RTA and Dayton Public Schools? And so we are actively engaged in that process now. Why can't preschoolers ride the same bus as their siblings? We did not receive funding for preschool transportation. What are your plans to improve test scores? You know, that's really about culture. You know, if you change the culture, you'll change test scores. Now, I can give you a technical answer. With research, writing, and presentation, kids get better. From K through 12, anytime you have them research something, which means then they have to go read it, and then they have to write about it, and then they have to present it, they get better. We know this to be true. The execution of that, we know to be true. But the question is, how do you develop a culture where that's done with fidelity? How do you develop a culture where, in addition to that, we have multiple experiences for students across the district, like the ones that we have here at Stivers? Yeah, we want kids to think about school as an experience. I don't remember what my third grade test scores were. I don't. But I remember my experience in school. I had a wonderful time at Jane Addams, Drexel, McNary, Westwood. At Westwood, we got 2 recesses. I remember that. Yeah, so I remember my experience. The question is, how do we develop an experience for children and for the adults who work in Dayton Public Schools too, because we want them to stay? What is the district doing to address bullying? This district is like most districts. I mean, there's a Ohio Revised Code, and there's a report that you have to fill out that details the incident itself and all the individuals who were party to the bullying incident. In addition to that, by law, you have to develop a safety plan that's communicated to the parents of the students that's bullied and the teachers, and then executed in school. And that safety plan could range from a check-in, check-out with the student, with the counselor, or a trusted adult, to moving students out of classes and away from each other, to security escorts. There are lots of different safety plans that you can have, but by law, we have to report it, and then develop a safety plan, and then execute the monitoring of the safety plan. Is there a way to create an after-school STEM program or more extracurricular activities? Chief Minor, can you take that one? Actually, that was our old job, assistant super minor. I said that for 5 years. I'm trying to get used to this new one.
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, and thank you for the great question. Today we spent a couple of hours going over funding, title funding. As you know, we get substantial amount of Title I funds and funds that are designed to give students experiences. In the past, it wasn't always allocated or used specifically to enhance a lot of its reading and math tutoring, but this year we'll be not only providing more field trips, providing more extracurricular activities after school, in some cases before, depending on the schedule of the school, and definitely including STEM programming with that. STEM and the arts, especially at the elementary level. There's a grant called Expanding Opportunities, and it's designed to provide new experiences for the students, so we're excited about that. We're excited to work with our parents to get suggestions and recommendations, as well as our community partners. So thank you.
Okay. I'll give you the band one too. The next one is band.
Oh, band.
There should be more band programs since we were already dealing with that today.
So that particular grant, Expanding Opportunities, and it's called Title IV funding, can provide extra support for music. We are increasing the band and music opportunities at the elementary level, and we're excited about that. Purchasing instruments and providing opportunities. We want to provide any supports for those students that might later on want to audition for this wonderful School of the Arts, and we want to make sure it's equitable, so all of our students have an opportunity to develop their visual arts or music, even drama skills, so that they can compete.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Minor and I were just in a budget meeting, a grant budget meeting, going over Title I, II, III, IV, and VI. And we have some additional resources to bring grant-funded individuals in to help us at the K-6 level to support band and other music initiatives, because we don't currently have that type of support there, but we want to bring someone in to do that. I know it's difficult to walk through those doors, and unless you have support outside of the school building where you are, never been involved in the arts, but want to be a part of Stivers School for the Arts. So for us, actually part of the grant is called Expanding Opportunities. We want to do that by making sure we utilize that money to do that. Also, some wraparound services for 7-12 as well. We have a proposal also to have 7-12 band support services as well, so that we can continue to get better in that space. What is your plan to retain and attract teachers? Ms. Morley, where are you? Can you, who's the clicker for today? Who's the clicker for today? Oh, gotcha. Gotcha, I got it. Yeah, how do you retain teachers? What's the plan? This is Disney. 300,000 employees, many unions. Those are all the barriers, they say, to creating culture. But when we go there and we take our children there, even ourselves sometimes, we generally have an experience that we never forget. They create an experience that you want to go back. That's what we want to do in Dayton, and that's what this current central office administration is dedicated to. Creating a space where employees want to stay here. Recruiting is one. So how do we retain teachers? Not just teachers. I get that a lot. How do we retain teachers? I worked in operations last year. If there's no transportation, there's no school. If no food service comes to work, there's no school. Yes, teachers are valuable. We have 895 of them, no doubt about it. But we also have paraprofessionals. We can't run classrooms without paraprofessionals. And let me say this, I was a paraprofessional for a day, in my previous life as a principal at Northmore Elementary in Northmont City Schools. We have an MDE unit with fragile students in it. And if we didn't have 2 pairs in there that day, 1 pair myself that day, we would have had to send kids home. And so I said, I'll jump in. After a day of changing diapers, working with trachs, pushing a wheelchair around, yeah, we can't do this without paraprofessionals. It's a hard job. We can't do it without secretaries. We don't want them to leave either. How do we retain them? In fact, Sharice, we never want you to leave. I'm serious. Sharice has been doing this a long time. Her institutional knowledge is such that she cannot be replaced overnight. Somebody would have to be around to train for a long time. We'd be paralyzed, almost crippled if she quit. Yeah, all these pieces are important. Your adjuncts. I was sitting in the classroom today with a couple of your, writing, poetry adjuncts. They were amazing. We can't do this without them. We can't do it without coaches who give up their time, and those stipends we give them for coaching are just a small amount. Pennies on a dollar, but they do it anyway. And they typically use it to take kids home, buy them food, uniforms. Yeah, I get this all the time about teachers. This is a massive organization, 2,300 people plus. The question is, how do we retain everybody? Because when people leave, institutional knowledge leaves, there's a crack in the armor, and we typically don't get better, typically. So we want to do it by creating a culture where people want to stay. And you do that by communicating, collaborating, by being honest and transparent. Teachers and schools not communicating enough with parents. Schools not returning parent phone calls. I get it. We have a weekly podcast. That was week 1 last week. Week 2 this week is customer service. Customer service. I said this before. I don't think folks leave Dayton Public Schools because of a report card. Because AMO stands for Annual Measurable Objectives. There's about, 11 categories, baseline cut scores, measured against state norms, and then you get a score. The same thing with growth, the same thing with proficiency. We have a really complex report card that has all these monikers that are really for educators, like when you really dig down. And so typically when people leave, they leave because of poor customer service, how they were treated. That's what they remember, how they were treated. So for us, we get it. That is one of the things that we're focusing on this year is how we provide customer service internal and external. How do you plan on getting more parents involved? Well, part of it is what we're doing now. We're out engaging the community, and they're engaging us in writing. You're doing it face-to-face. We have a terrific PIO office that works really hard to make sure that the things that we do that are positive are out in the community, and the things where we trip, stumble, and sometimes fall, that we give an accurate representation of what happened, and that we get back up, dust ourselves off, learn from the incident, and then get better. New business. Art and music. I have heard that many elementary schools no longer have art, music, and PE full-time. Is there a plan to restore these programs? I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Brown. I'll let her answer that. All right, Chief of Elementary Schools.
Good evening. Good That actually is a good question. When we came into this position, we have some elementaries that are very large, and we have some elementaries that their student enrollment is much smaller. We have some schools that have 3 sections of every grade and some that have 2 or maybe just 1. So when we came into this position, we saw that there were some schools that were sharing, but some were sharing in a variety of different ways. Some had 3 part-time, music, PE, and arts, and some maybe had a full-time and then 2 part-times. It's very hard to do a schedule when you have 3 part-times of anyone, because normally if you have like 2 grades, 2 classes of every grade, you need at least 2 there every single day to make sure everybody has art or music. So what we did was we worked very hard to do a couple different things. One, to make sure those elementaries that had lower numbers had at least 1 full-time special there every day. And then they would share with another school those others, so we make sure we had 2 specials. So every student has the opportunity to have, during that week, art, music, or PE. We did it that way because we were up against the wall too. You know, we only had so much staff to go around. Our plan is to analyze that and make maybe different choices for next school year. But we wanted to make sure that when we were sharing, that we weren't sharing between 2 different buildings. So one teacher coming from one building, one teacher coming from another building, or sharing, so that teacher has to go one day at 7 o'clock to one building and 9 o'clock at the next building. So we wanted to make sure that we shared between the same schools, so that those principals could collaborate and create their schedule, and that those teachers could have somebody to talk to too, and collaborate, that they know they're sharing the same students in each building, so there's some collaboration as well. So we are, but every student does have art, music, and PE during that week.
Okay, thanks, I appreciate you, Ms. Burlock. Will we continue to use the audition acceptance model at Stivers? Yes. With an exclamation point. I was fortunate to have a year where I couldn't believe I was getting paid to do the work I was doing. It was here. I was an assistant principal here. And I got a chance to walk around and go see choir, band, dance, piano, ceramics, creative writing, theater. Yeah, I walk around here all day. And of course, we did lunch duty and bring your kids in for breakfast duty and then dismissal and then sports after school and then arts performances. But nonetheless, I would go down to my principal's office and sit in the chair at around 7 p.m. And she'd be working, probably thinking, doesn't he know I have a lot of work to do? But she always took the time to listen. Thank you, Ms. Dooley. And I sit there and say, Ms. Dooley, I can't believe this. This place is amazing. I can't believe I get paid for this. She said, well, David, it's going to get harder. It's going to get harder. There's a lot to do here. And there is. There's a lot to do here. There are a lot of layers here. But this is an amazing place. There's no way you do anything to derail the course that it's on. I couldn't do it, wouldn't do it, and I'm a Stivers person too. I spent time here. A fantastic and amazing place. When we keep open enrollment to ensure Stivers remains one of the top high schools in the nation. Yes, I just kind of spoke about, what we want to do and how we want to do it. You want to have a bunch of flagships, no doubt about it. Each school, it's got to have its own unique culture. We talked about that in space. And then you also want to enrich and enhance the spaces that are already doing really well. And this is one of those spaces, for sure. And this has been built long before I was here as the interim superintendent. Again, I was here working 15 years ago. And so we've continued, I was here today. We've certainly continued the tradition. Things are just as phenomenal today to me as they were 15 years ago. So we'll continue to do that work. That leads right into the next question. Do you plan to change anything about Stivers? Yeah, so I don't do yous. I work on a team. There's like 10 of us, an academic team, and there's a bigger team that's like 14 or 15 of us. And we've had no discussions about, as a team, changing anything about Stivers. But I did speak earlier about site-based management. And I was out here earlier with the principals, and I said, hey, tell us what you need. So the administration, in conjunction with Liz Whips, may say, hey, these are some gaps that we have here, some things that we need to get better. And if it's in the purview of the scope of work that we're doing this year, then we respond with a yes and we move forward. So yeah, it's this interaction between central office and what happens in the building. Central office being 136 Ludlow 2. The idea is that we all leave our spaces there, come out to buildings to observe, support, help, and respond in real time to building-based needs. I would just tell you this today on camera. Central office transformation around the country usually ends with the leader being pushed out, because it is an extraordinary journey or path to go down. Most central offices don't want to change. No. They rally the troops. Rally the troops. We're comfortable in central office. I don't want to go to the building where kids are. Why would I do that? Yeah, most central office transformation leaders, they don't make it. But I'm committed to this. This is my 28th year. I'm going to roll the dice and hope that we transform central office in the interest of children and this community to support schools. In opposition to that, we just deal with it. Can you please continue to make communication throughout DPS better? Hey, right on cue. I promise I didn't know this was going to be the question. That's a key to building trust with the community. Timely communication. So what we do internally is when things are good or bad, we send emails out. And we go to buildings and say, this is what happened. We had several internal issues this week, and we responded. Where's Alex? There she is, Adriana. We get, that's right, there she is. We talk daily, don't we? Daily. She's part of the public information office. And we craft statements every few days and say, hey, something went wrong. And we send it to all 2,300 people. And that we're going to fix it. Or prepare for something, like, this is what we're going to do to prepare for the heat. Or here's some alternate strategies for what we're going to be doing. I talk to the public information office more than I do the academics. They're first, the lawyers are second. Yeah, I thought I was going to be hanging out with Dooley all day talking. No, sir. PIO and the lawyers. So, yes, we're going to continue to figure out how to communicate better internally and externally. Yeah, we're in the process of like developing a template for principals to send a weekly note out to parents. I worked in a place one year, one space, they called it Tuesday Newsday. So every Tuesday, all the newsletters went out across the community to the parents. And so we're processing rapidly, like how do we get in the space where you get weekly communication at the least. How can parents and community members help with communication? What say you, Miss Davies? Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, you. Our PIO person, what do you think? Yeah. How do you think parents, how do you think they can help us with communication?
I think the best way, should I come up there?
Yep, sure can.
I'm gonna get on Reddit.
Oh, you got this. She used to be on TV
Yeah,
all the time. Realities.
I was.
Yeah.
That's why I left, but DPS is the greatest. I think the best way as parents, obviously a lot of you are, is, we try to share as much as positive, community things on social media. Sorry. I'm used to just having it clipped to my shirt. As someone that works in the public information office, we always try to highlight the happiest, most positive things that we can. And having interactions with parents and creating kind of that sense of positivity is something that I think would ultimately come back to the culture aspect from the communications team and just building excitement around the students. They're the content, obviously, because we love to highlight them. And I think that in turn, that just ultimately will, increase the community and all that kind of stuff that comes behind it. So I think it starts with, positive presence on social media, trying to continue to grow that, and that also falls on, maybe liking a post and sending a comment when you see something fun, or even we have a pionews@daytonpublic.com email that you guys can send, if you are out and we're missing something, share it with us. We'd love to see it. There's only the two of us that head out to schools, and then the other two that do all of our video and stuff like that. So we are, not a small team. We're larger than most school districts, but sometimes we're missing things and we still want to highlight it. So feel free to share that with us too.
I appreciate you.
Sweating.
You got that. It's hot. The last question, before we take questions, would you riff teachers or educators if we had another pandemic-like circumstance? I'm on a team and we love to read, like all the academics, all 10 of us, we read stuff all the time, share it, talk about it. And I was reading something this weekend, and the title of it was 20 mistakes that new superintendents make. 20 mistakes that new superintendents make. And I was reading through the 20. I made a few. And there's one that I'm getting ready to make on purpose, and I know that I'm getting ready to make it, but it's okay. It's to make the point about, would we riff teachers or educators or staff members if there were another pandemic-like situation? One of the 20 do nots for a new superintendent is they say, don't talk about the district you came from, let it go. But I'm going to talk about Northmont. High caliber, high quality, high class place. 5 board members who've been on the board at least 16 years. They're thick as thieves. They're going to run forever. Linda was a teacher, has been a board president for decades. And so, you look at the principals and the superintendent, and they made a decision, that leadership team, during the pandemic, and it went like this. We have budgeted for the year. We've already budgeted for the year. Why would we lay somebody off? This isn't a bank. It's not a private enterprise. Yeah, there's no carryover like that. Why would we be so ruthless to lay off people that we've already budgeted for? Yeah, we could repurpose them. Find something else to do during that time. They can get better in other spaces and places. Yeah, so I learned that from Tony Thomas. I learned it from Northmont. It's called compassion in those spaces, and it goes a long way. So to answer your question, while I'm the superintendent, no. I'll take some questions.
Yes, so this is a question about, well, thank you for the presentation and engaging us and addressing the questions and the method of having folks participate. That's a good modeling practice of community engagement, so thank you for that. One thing I was curious about that didn't come up in the list, something just to consider to put out there, is in terms of, okay, there it is. Thank you. All right. So in terms of curriculum, I teach, I'm at the University of Dayton. And one thing is, you know, the world is huge, right? Many different cultures, civilizations, etc., right? Is there discussion about how to diversify the curriculum in a way so students are more prepared to know about other places, other cultures, other peoples, their histories, their philosophies, their views of music, and all of that? Because it's often very narrow, not just in the university, but also at the elementary level. So stuff about diversifying the curriculum.
Thank you. You teach at the University of Dayton?
Yeah, yes.
You know who that guy is?
Spina, yes, that's our
That's
president.
right.
That's Eric Spina.
Eric Spina. This is Eric Spina, the president. He and I got a chance to bond today at lunch.
Okay.
Yeah, got a chance to bond. And we talked about how Dayton Public Schools and UD can work together to expand opportunities, among other things. To answer your question, it's a universal yes. The team that I work on, I mentioned that we read a lot. We're international scholars. I mention the term a lot, empirical research, right? I looked it up and Googled it. No, empirical research, actually information about what other schools do around America. And you're absolutely right. Not only schools here, but the focus of America in general is narrow. It's typically focused on Americans. And there's a big giant world out there, right? And we do intend to process and think through our curriculum so that it's culturally responsive and it's bigger than just here. There's no doubt about it. We acknowledge that the world is rapidly changing, and so is America. And I think what we teach, how we teach, and what we say should look like a changing America, changing world. No doubt about it. I watched some students today at Wilbur Wright. I was there today, and I watched a group of students. There must have been about a dozen girls, and they were in two different sets, 6 and 6, speaking two totally different languages on their way out for dismissal. That was not the case 50 years ago when I was in school. We have an international presence here in Dayton. America is becoming international, and the curriculum needs to reflect that. There's no doubt about it. Mr. Ezrati?
I don't need the microphone.
Okay.
You have a slide up there that says communication. You say it's key.
Yes.
I put a public records request in to find out how much this board was paying you and what was the contract. Nobody would give me an honest answer. Apparently the word supplemental has a new definition because they gave you a supplemental contract of $160,000. That usually means in addition to the existing contract, which is the only contract you have, which is $135,000 as business manager. Why could your district, you, your PIO, your board, not give a straight answer? I find that reprehensible from somebody who I have known for over 25 years, who has always walked the talk and been a straight shooter. I am aghast that I could not get a straight answer.
You've known me for a while, you're right, and I am a straight shooter. I would typically not answer that question in this capacity, but I'll answer it today. The board voted on that supplemental on Tuesday. We have legal processes that are in place for contracts that we have to go through and follow. And then once we finish that process, your public records request is typically responded to by PIO, but I actually personally responded to it this time.
Last night.
I responded to it.
A week later.
Come on, you responded. You said nobody responded. I have a question as a parent.
Thank you.
It's not that man pocket for one. For two, my season is new to that middle school. And plays on fall sport. And I am having difficulty with Final Four. The coach pulled my child out of practice yesterday. And I personally went to the doctor's office and got everything and delivered it on the Tuesday of the beginning of school to, is that Jackson Center?
Yeah.
The communication, okay, this is the appropriate use for communication, sir. The communication between Jackson Center and the coach hasn't connected yet. I'd like to bring that to the forefront because there are probably a lot more of my child in this district who's going through that. And there's been concern, and they're missing out on time. This is tryouts. Now my child can't try out, can't make the team. How can we improve that communication? And is there anyone here who is a part of that team that can hear what you're saying and y'all work together to make it better? Because as parents, we couldn't do Final Forms, onboarding the district.
Yeah, so I see Lisa Minor with a pen out, her left hand writing. So two things. I want to address this in two spaces. The first is we want to take care of your situation. But I want to thank you for bringing it up. We're having difficulty with Final Forms. We transitioned to it, and it's not working like we thought it would. In fact, Final Forms is part of a whole consortium of things underneath Power Schools that's not working and like we thought it would. And we meet every week now. We are battling this right now. We used to have a monthly committee meeting. Now we meet every weekend. It's an all-out offensive to try to figure this out.
Well, I challenge you to add this to your Bible. Both parents in a two-parent household aren't allowed to have their information. So if something happens, it's the responsibility of one parent, and you never know what's going on in a day. That one parent may have an emergency at work and it slips their mind, and the other parent misses something, or the child misses it because the other parent doesn't know to check in to get the child to the event. It would be nice if both parents were able to be on that one call system that you guys use for these kids.
Dr. Burke, can you
Oh, Parent Square, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, got you.
Yeah.
She does Parent Square?
Well, at the district level, schools typically handle Parent Square with in-house. So if it's part of
So
it,
is it just Stivers policy to have one parent, or is it a district policy to have one parent?
on Parent Square,
Yes,
you can have more than one parent.
because they told us one parent. And it wasn't here that I was told that.
If you're speaking on Final Forms, I do not know that, but on Parent Square, you can have more than one guardian or parent listed.
Okay, we're gonna figure that out. 'Cause
Okay.
I think this is the second time I've asked this, because we have tried it as an onboarding parent.
But you know what? Where there's smoke, there's fire. If you're saying this, there's somebody else who didn't come out.
It's in the chairs
Yeah.
in the room before anything I know.
Yeah. Speak it, brother. Speak it. So we'll deal with your case in solving it individually, but we'll also use it to say that we'll figure out how to get some type of communication out district-wide for parents who may be thinking or dealing with the same thing that you're dealing with.
Thank you.
No problem at all. Yes.
Hello. Really quick question about this creation of this culture that will retain people.
Yeah.
One of my criticisms of the previous administration was it always seemed to be like top down. That's how I felt as a parent, like decrees
Yeah.
with maybe some performance of listening to the community, but not actually listening. So my question is, how important will it be for you, or how important do you think it is to really listen to the people on the ground, like the teachers, the staff in the schools, the parents, in making decisions and like incorporating their expertise?
I so appreciate the question. It is seminal to my existence as an educator. That's why we're out in buildings every day, because we're listening, hearing, observing, processing, taking information back in. You know, I eat lunch most days with some of our customers who people, they really don't talk about a lot. 8-year-olds. I go around the buildings and sit down and eat lunch with kids, and they tell you everything. And if you ask them about their day, they say, not only ask them about their day, but in kid terms, ask them, hey, in your experience, how would you grade your school? Yeah, I ask kids that at lunch. I begin my day, every day, in school buildings and transportation. I typically don't go to my office at Jackson Center or Ludlow until the end of the day. So I drive around from school to school to school listening to kids, our customers. Yeah, and they tell me things like in high school, it's boring. Get some adjuncts in here. I mean, they don't say that, but that's what they mean. Yeah. It's boring. That means get some more after school activities here. It's boring. That means have a pepper simmer. Yeah. It's boring. That means more field trips. Yeah.
Where'd they go?
I think because of COVID and not just this district, many never went back, but we are. We've talked about, that is a huge initiative for us, field trips. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have even instituted, used to have a 30-day window to say, I want to go on a field trip. Used to have to tell transportation 30 days ahead of time. Now it's just 14. Yeah, we say, hey, let's cut this down. Let's get on these buses and go. Let's get out of these school buildings. Those days are just as important as sitting in the building, learning science, social studies, reading the math. Absolutely great question. We talk to all the customers, but the biggest customer is the child. Yeah, we're going to have a climate and culture survey day, a day that all of Dayton Public Schools is committed to taking surveys about lots of different things, right? And that means kids and adults. And we get that information back and we move on it. Yeah, the entire day is committed to that because we want to get that information. Your kids will tell you what's wrong, for sure.
I have a senior and she is very worried. And so I am very worried because they don't have counselors right now. And she's worked very hard to be able to get to the point where she's starting to apply for scholarships and merit scholarships. And she has a real concern, and therefore I have a real concern, not only a concern for her not having someone to put down as that school contact that she needs to be able to apply for those scholarships, but also because as a parent, I'm not really sure how to navigate that whole process. It's a challenge.
I want to answer this in 2 phases. The first is to ignite. I am. I got you. Yeah, in 2 phases. I have a senior. I'm concerned because we have not enough counselors, one in several buildings, that merit scholarships and other scholarships, and the process itself of a senior, I won't be able to navigate it. So two spaces. The first is to acknowledge, yes, we have a counselor shortage. That's a fact. Ms. Dooley we were just in a meeting with counselors, correct? And Ms. Dooley has actually been the counselor in several schools, working on the technical pieces. That's not sustainable, but we're treading water right now, trying to make it happen. And as we kind of go through this process, you know, there's something that's really not talked about a lot in principalship, but principals are counselors too. We have to activate the principals as part of our conversation as counselors too. Meaning they're involved in the counseling process. They see kids every day, all day. And while we figure out how to bridge and get 2 counselors in each building, the principals will have to step in and fill that gap. I've been a counselor before too. And so, yeah, that's a concern for sure. We just met, I can't remember, Monday. It was Monday. With the counselors at the middle school and high school, and we are actively working on something other than a bridge being Ms. Dooley. Yes, ma'am. so much. We'll take one more.
I have kind of a relay on that. Stivers is completely different than most of the other Dayton public schools. So to even try to compare the communication and parent involvement with Stivers to even Belmont, if some of these parents drove down Waterville late when the school got out, they might understand that it's. Alright, I lost my words.
It's okay.
But how can you go about, I mean, I don't have a child at Belmont, I just
Yeah.
live there and I see the circus.
Yep.
And I drive down Waterville. What can we do to make the kids want to be at school so that way there's actually something to take away from them? Because they don't have, there's nothing to be taken away from them at home. So what can this district do to make kids want to behave better, I suppose?
Yeah, what can the district do to make kids want to behave better? What can the district do to get kids engaged? I spoke earlier about lots of things like field trips, after-school activities. I talked about culture, but I do want to. This is it's a good way to kind of close out today. Parents are like students. When you're a teacher and you walk into your classroom and you get your class roster, there are students that are all along the learning continuum, all along the social, emotional, and behavior continuum, and parents are the same way. What we are actively working on now in our team, and I think it's important to note that the team actually kind of just came together. We've been together for a couple weeks, and the big deal was open school, and we've had a successful opening, but then now what, right? And so as we talk, we're like, we have to, for some parents, we have to give them or provide for them some things that they should be working on to assist us as educators. And we have to write that down and give it to them, and we're going to do that as a team. By grade band, and say, hey, parents, this is an example of what we've been talking about, and then how we push it out through PIO, through schools. Parents in grade bands, in a grade band 3 through 6, no student should come home and say they don't have homework, because every DPS student that has not mastered their multiplication tables should be working on it every night. So we're going to develop a kind of a parent one-pager by grade band and say, this is what your kids should be doing by grade band, by subject matter. Because I'm sitting in a classroom with a 6th grader, me, working with this 6th grader, and I noticed repeatedly that we have issues with simple multiplication facts, and I see it wherever I go, right? You can't, as a former high school math teacher, you can't go any further without that. It seems simple, but it paralyzes you. It paralyzes you. And so we have a list of basic to-dos that you just have to do. And we're going to develop that and put it in the hands of parents who need it. Some parents don't, but some do. And we want to service all those parents. Thanks. We appreciate you.